Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Enrich Your Journey Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Monahan. I believe this is episode 20. Really excited to have with me today Mitch Meyers. I wanted to talk about and have for quite some time the subject of marketing. I was fortunate enough to have a couple mutual connections to Mitch and wanted to bring her in as a marketing expert and also probably share some pretty great stories from your career. Again, just talking about kind of marketing 101. I'll share some stats as I always do. If you're watching this episode, you're in business already, but you think you could market more. I hope to address that today. If you're not marketing at all, even if you're thinking about switching careers, Mitch has successfully done that numerous times and started businesses. So I think that'll be really valuable for you all to hear. So thanks for being here. Really happy to have you.
Thanks for having me.
I'll start as I always do. I'll read Mitch's intro, and then we'll get into some stats and again some more about marketing. So before retiring, Mitch was the co-founder and president of an award-winning marketing and communications agency, which employed 350 people with 5 offices, 5 states, and revenues of $42+ million annually. Mitch was also named Ad Woman of the Year. She was the CEO and pilot of the famed Zipatoni Group and the mother of Bud Light. I love that. We'll definitely circle back with that. She has spent over 25 years in the marketing and communication space, building, launching, and consulting for major brands, Fortune 100 companies, startup businesses, various advisory boards, and nonprofit organizations. After retiring as a lifelong learner, she studied up and was among the first to win a medical cannabis dispensary license in Illinois in 2013, then followed by a couple years later obtaining numerous licenses in our domicile state of Missouri. Her latest and I believe current business ventures include the role of co-owner and partner at the Belief Company in St. Louis, where they produce high-quality CBD oils to treat epilepsy patients, as well as developing brands for the general consumer market. Lastly, Mitch is also a partner in Belief Medical Company, which owns and operates 18 medical cannabis licenses all around the St. Louis area. I love this from her bio. At the end, it says, "So much for retirement." Very inspiring to see, somebody with such a storied, successful career. I don't know, maybe not wanting to just hang it up and sail off in the sunset, as they say, but to continue to, sort of reinvent yourself, if you will, and obviously tap into a newer market is pretty exciting. So again, thanks for being here. Did I miss anything in the intro?
No, you did not. Unfortunately, I did fail at retiring. That lifelong learning thing gets you in trouble sometimes.
Sure, but it's a good way to stay young, though, right?
I think so.
Staying busy, keep the mind focused. So we'll start, similar format as I usually do. Just again, kind of setting the stage on the topic of marketing, the impact of marketing. I'll share briefly. I think probably most of you know what marketing is, but I will share a definition of it, share some stats, and then we'll get into some cool stories and some great questions, hopefully. So according to the American Marketing Association, marketing is the process of creating, communicating, and delivering value to customers and managing customer relationships in ways that benefit the organization and the stakeholders. It encompasses all activities aimed at identifying and satisfying customer needs and wants, ultimately driving sales and business growth. I think that's a pretty short and sweet, captures most of it. Obviously, delivering the value is the biggest part of it. Understanding, the impact it makes and being able to measure that. A few stats here. We know how powerful marketing can be, but I think these are all relevant. This is according to Social Shepherd. Companies that focus on nurturing leads through inbound marketing make 50% more in sales. Here's one according to Siege Media Group. Marketers who prioritize marketing efforts are 13 times more likely to see a positive return on investment. That's a huge number.
Yeah.
96% of prospects report doing their own research before speaking with a human sales rep. I thought that was an interesting one. Obviously, if they're looking up a service or product, the marketing that they're coming upon needs to be very effective. That's according to HubSpot. And then the last one, 87% of marketers report that content marketing generates demands and leads, and 52% say that content marketing helps build loyalty with existing customers. That's according to Content Marketing Institute. So I think we can agree marketing, if done right, if done actively and very engaging, a lot of that comes up, that word engaging, can be super helpful, powerful, impactful to the ROI of a company. I would love to step back a little bit. If we go back in time to your role with a well-known beer manufacturer here in St. Louis, Anheuser-Busch, as a marketing executive, would love to hear stories that you had really in your marketing days there. I should point out that Mitch was the launched Spuds McKenzie, the mascot of Bud Light. Again, I mentioned the mother of Bud Light in her bio. But if you could just take us back to that time, we won't have to talk about how many years, maybe, just a decade ago-ish, right? Just about what that was like and the importance of marketing, and really what marketing was like back then as compared to today, and, what you're seeing in today's marketing.
So listening to all those stats makes me think I probably should have gotten a degree in marketing in college, and I did not. I got a degree in accounting and a master's in finance. So I started my career working for a CPA firm, spent a couple of years doing tax and audit, and realized I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. So started to figure out how to get into more mainstream. I went to the 7-Up company, which was based in St. Louis at the time, and ended up taking an accounting job, but transitioning into marketing because they really liked my financial background. And that's kind of a theme through my whole career, is that financial underpinning was so important. So I get the job in marketing at 7-Up, and about a year later, a headhunter comes calling that there is a beer company looking to hire an assistant product manager to launch a new product. Would I be interested? And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, I would be.
Yes.
So I and about 12 guys were the slate of people they put in front of these people at Anheuser-Busch. And I think they thought Mitch was going to be a guy. So I got the interview.
Think about that.
And frankly, I got the job because of my financial background. Very big budgets there. Very easy to go over budget. Or if you need to cut budgets, which people typically do during a year, they wanted somebody that could kind of have control of that. So I got the job, and the brand was Bud Light. We were introducing, Budweiser Light.
Oh, Budweiser Light. That's right.
Budweiser
That's
Light.
right.
And at the time, they had tried Anheuser-Busch Light, Michelob Light. They tried their very best not to put the Budweiser name on a light beer. In fact, the management at the time felt like they could kill the category. They really always thought, when wine coolers came out, how do we kill the category? And then if we can't, be a fast follower. So Miller Lite had been on the market 10 years, couldn't kill it. Here comes Coors Light. It's like, okay, we're going to put the Budweiser name on this. And the marketing campaign that the whole team approved was very serious. You can imagine when you put Budweiser's name on something, better be good.
There. Yep.
Better be good. Lots of important eyes are on it. And there were 3 of us on this marketing team. And obviously we had agencies' help. So the campaign was very serious. Bring out your best. And we had the single Clydesdale running on the beach, running in the mountains. And it was big fun for the agency and the brand team to be on those shoots. The consumer could have cared less.
That's interesting.
So the strength of Anheuser-Busch and all their distributor network, they were able to get that beer in almost every account overnight. Here we come. Here's how much we're spending. Here's your promotional plan, Mr. Retailer. So we get it in, terribly successful rollout, and the beer sits. Then moved.
Which is not good.
It's that,
you gotta move it.
It's that pesky consumer, right? Who already has a brand in that category. They've been drinking for 10 years. Mm-hmm. They don't know why they should change. Yep. So here we come, phase 2. Let's shorten it to Bud Light. Did a little product formulation. Came back out with the same serious advertising. Roll it back out. Phase 2, the beer sits. So my boss and I are, this is pretty dramatic at this point. We're 2 years into it. We go out and start hanging out in market. I'm in Texas in a pool hall in middle of August. It's 122 degrees. Guys are playing pool, walking up to the bartender saying, "Give me a light." And the bartender doesn't ask anything. He turns around, taps a pitcher of Miller Lite, and hands it to him. And so I watched this a couple of times. Everybody just says, "Give me a light." And so I go up to the bartender and I said, "Why aren't you asking if they want a Coors Light or a Bud Light?" Or he said, "Been coming here 10 years. I know they want a Miller Lite." So I go to a couple of bars and I see the same thing. I go back and I use the payphone back in the day, in the 80s, call my boss who's in Ohio doing the same thing. And I said, "We have a bar crawl problem. People do not ask for the product that they want." And he said, "I'm seeing the same thing." So we come back to St. Louis, we get with the agency and say, we need just a quick campaign that we can test on late night TV. And, you know, we need it to be really hard hitting, funny, just get people to say, you know, don't be a sheep, order what you want, ask for what you want. So they created this campaign. It was just called "Give Me a Light." And somebody would walk into a bar and say to a bartender, "Give me a light." And you would see like dogs jumping through flaming hoops on the bar or a lit arrow flying past. It was a sight gag, you know. And then the bartender would say, "Don't just ask for any light, ask for a Bud Light." And then we were able to deliver a quality message and stuff like that. So we get this on, and it's funny. It's silly. Miller Lite been silly for 10 years.
Sure.
And people liked it.
Successful, yeah, right.
So we put it on the air, and after about a week, we get a call from Mr. Bush's office that it's terrible. It's got to come off. It's not the quality Anheuser-Busch would deliver. You know, it's definitely not our Clydesdale running through the snow.
Yes.
And we literally begged and said, "Please let us keep this. We're not running it on, you know, Sunday sports.
Yep.
This is late night. It's a younger audience." And then we started to see things in the marketplace where people were doing their own sight gags. And they would send us tapes of them, you know, doing something sillier and sillier. This is before social media, right?
Sure.
So people would like get out their video camera and send you a VHS tape.
Wow.
And we had captured the imagination of people, and they're finally talking about the brand.
Which was probably a huge point.
It was huge.
Yeah.
It was huge. We needed that, just something to break the mindset that, oh, maybe I should try this. Now, in the meantime, the light beer category is growing, right? There's more women in the workforce. More women are out drinking lunch, happy hours, things like that. And they preferred lights to regular premium beers. But it didn't influence guys from drinking it or not drinking it. So we just kept building on that sort of playful sense of humor. I had brought in, we had worked with the agency to create the Bud Light concept as a very simple, you know, giveaway poster. And the management at the time said, "No, AB will never do a dog." And so the following year, I was still struggling for things. And I called the agency and I said, "Let's just do that poster with that dog." And they said, "Oh, you know, the VP of marketing at the time said, no, we're not doing that." And everybody trembled in their boots. And I said, "He won't notice. This is such a small program. We're just going to do it." So literally in 48 hours, we figured out what breed of dog. We didn't want anything that was stereotypical. Mm-hmm. They had to get a kennel book and start looking through the pages. Wow. And I said, "I don't want a stereotypical, you know, the personality of a sheepdog or a German shepherd." Golden Doodles didn't exist at that time. So somebody said on the call, "What was the dog that General Patton had in his Jeep?" And they're looking, and they find it, and it's like English Bull Terrier. Looks like a pig. Looks like a pig with a patch, right? Yep. So they called a kennel club in Chicago and said, "Do you have any English Bull Terriers?" And they said, "Yeah, we got 3. And they said, "Do you have any with the patch over its eye?" "Yes, Evil Eye Knievel. She, Evie."
No way.
She.
Wow.
So I said, "Okay, let's set up Tucker Studio Thursday. I'll be up there." So I fly up. The lady that owns the dog brings Spuds, as we named her. And we did that first photo shoot, which is on a zillion things, you know, with the Greek God dog thing, the party hat and the silly streamers and balloons. And, you know, so that was the first thing we did. I come back with the film, right? Nothing digital at that point, the film. And the distributors loved it. So they ended up buying a bunch of it. And it's like, all right, now what do I do? It's out and the VP is going to see this. So I ended up blowing the program out. And then that following fall, when we presented all of our marketing to senior management, I had a guy dressed in the costume. We had all kinds of swag, stuffed animals. And as I'm presenting all this, Mr. Bush is sitting in the front row.
This is the third?
The third.
Time.
He sits back and starts staring, and I can still see the look on his face. I mean, he is an intense person.
Mm-hmm. I met him.
Just, staring at this, and you can't tell if he's mad or happy or going to kill me. So I get done, and I had the guy walk in the big Spud suit and hand him a big stuffed, Spud's dog. I went over and sat down on the side of the stage. He grabbed that dog, stood up, and stomped over to me in front of like 120 people. And everybody thought he was going to fire me and hit me with the dog. And he shook it in my face and he said, "This is great."
Wow,
so
what a cool moment.
It was very cool. The thing is that dog ended up selling a lot of beer for the brewery. And I speak at a lot of marketing classes at colleges, and I tell people that big ideas don't present themselves in a box with a big bow and $1 million price tag. They're little ideas. And sometimes they never see the light of day because somebody puts them in the dumpster.
Yep.
And I know my agency did that a lot for our clients. We'd have great ideas we thought were big, and you just couldn't get the client to buy it. And, I had the VP of marketing at Coke say to me, "Where's the big ideas for us?" And I said, "They're in my dumpster." And he shook his fist at me and said, "I pay you to keep them out of the dumpster."
That's good.
And I said, "You're right. I got to go. I got work to do.
That's awesome.
I got some dumpster diving to do."
And Bud Light sales in 1989 went up 30+%.
Yes, dramatically.
So,
well, and I'm telling you, there were places like we could not get distribution. Certain parts of the country, Miller Lite was much stronger, or Coors Light.
Sure.
We created this 3-dimensional Spuds. It was just a plastic thing that sat on a bar that lit up. If I would give a bar that, they would throw out any light beer I wanted and put me in.
Crazy. So they
and distribution, the distribution is huge. So, it did sell a lot of beer, taught us all a lot, and unfortunately, she lived about, I don't know, 8 or 9 years beyond that. But I would always get flowers every year from Spuds' family.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What a great story. I picked up a lot of really neat things there just as it relates to marketing. I think, first of all, you're being keen on being out and putting boots on the ground. So you were studying what the market wanted. And I feel like it's very easy if you're trying to come up with a marketing concept, you can sit online and read what's working, what's not working. But that's different than you actually took it upon yourself to go out and sit there and study the marketplace, which took time, obviously resources and money to do that.
Yeah.
But in that moment, that's really kind of what led to the rest of the story. You realized
it's psychology. You have to see who are the consumers we want to reach. How are they behaving? What else are they doing? How do we get to be part of that product set? And today you can do a lot of that online because you have a view into their world. You can see what they're talking about online, right? You can put out an idea and see what happens.
Sure.
I mean, you saw Bud Light do that last year with the Dylan Mulvaney thing.
Yep.
They put it out there and it started a forest fire.
Yep.
And that's it's scary to not be able to get your arms around that.
Yep.
Yeah, it's hugely damaged the brand.
The other thing I picked up from that story too is that details matter. So in your example, I mean, if it was connecting with, maybe primarily men in that example that were not drinking it, that have, a man's best friend, a dog, you guys probably could have just picked a dog,
right?
But you guys took it so many more layers to find out it has to be the perfect one. So I think the details in marketing, you might agree that it probably wouldn't have been near as successful or successful at all had you just picked the most householded dog, a yellow lab.
Stroh's copied us a couple years later where they had just a normal dog that would go get beer out of a fridge for a guy. But we were able to put a personality on Spuds.
Sure.
She was so unique. Unfortunately, it drove demand for that breed like crazy.
I bet.
For years.
I bet it did.
And it was not a common breed. It was also considered an aggressive breed. And Spuds was like the antithesis of that. I mean, we'd set her up like in a college dorm with her paw on the calculator, and she'd sit there for 20 minutes waiting for a little Weetabisque, to be done.
Yep.
And then we ended up taking her everywhere. Like, we were at the Super Bowl one year, and he was going to be in the Super Bowl. So I called the Stanford Hotel, and I said, "Are you pet friendly?" "No." I said, "It's Spuds McKenzie." "Absolutely."
Come on in.
Sweet.
Come on in.
Right.
Yep. I think the last one, too, that's admirable is that you mentioned doing this because you had faith in it, where you believe that this was going to work, and you put all your effort and time into it, right? And you probably could have gone with status quo of we're going to stay with the Clydesdales, everybody knows. But I think, again, being boots on the ground, understanding the details, but then really having faith to let it play out. You have to give these time when this is a brand new concept with a major global brand. I think the fact that, you stuck with it, and then all of a sudden you have Anheuser-Busch III in your face, commending you on doing that is a big part of marketing that you have to believe in.
And the people below him that I reported up to had said, "We're not going to do it," and you could get fired. I think I was just young and dumb. I thought it was a good idea. And I'm like, you know what, guys? I'm closer to the target's age than you are. I think we need to try this.
Yep.
And so, I'll give August credit. He always had faith in me because I didn't roll over. I wasn't afraid to tell him when I thought something was a bad idea.
Yep.
I think he actually respected the fact that I stood up to him. And at the time, I didn't have 3 kids to take care of, and I could afford to. But I just saw the difference that made with my relationship with him and what I could say and do. I didn't have to compromise and, just tell him what he wanted to hear.
And sometimes when you have, this too, and as do I, and this is, talked about a lot, when you have a domineering type A personality, sometimes you get that person's attention by matching that.
Right.
If everybody's been called this whole time and they're just yes people, you probably got his attention by bringing a little bit of a different vibe there with him.
Well, my favorite story about him, I was on a new product introduction for a dry beer. So dry beer came out of Japan, and I think that he had heard that Coors and Miller were trying to get into it. So he had asked me to head up a brand. It was going to be, I guess it was Michelob Dry, and it was being produced out of our California brewery because there's a special filtration process that they needed to put in. So our plan was to roll it out in Chicago, which is kind of Miller's hometown. Yeah. And, we had scheduled something like for, I don't know, a month and a half later. And we're sitting in a big meeting, and I see his secretary walk down to him with a piece of paper. He reads it. He spins around in his chair and starts yelling my name. And I'm like, oh my God, what did I do?
Uh-oh.
And I go down there, and he said, "Miller is rolling out, in Chicago this weekend. What are we doing about it?" Now, this is Monday. And I sat there and looked at him and totally bullshitted the answer and said, "We're going to put 5 cases on a truck and triple team it, just drive it straight through. I can have cups and T-shirts and swag, and I can actually get a neon sign made. We'll go to Clark's, and we'll, Friday night, we'll have a party there." And he looked at me and he goes, "Great." And it's like, I turned around to walk out, and it's like,
we got some work to do.
I got some work to do.
That's awesome.
Some work to do. But it's like, stuff happens all the time. And with marketing and sales, you have to pivot. You have to act and react. You can't just sit there like we're a big company with our feet nailed to the floor and we're going to be second.
Yeah.
That's not a good answer for him.
Do you think it's important to be conscious of, he was known, as was August the 4th, they were competitors, right? They always want to be the best. That was part of the brand. Do you think that's correlated to how successful marketing was back then, that, you had to pivot quick,
right,
to your point, where they wanted to be the best? A lot of CEOs at the time maybe wouldn't have been as aggressive with trying to stay in front of competition. If you're already doing super well, you've got
right,
this major brewery.
Right.
But to me, it seems like firms that are best at marketing are also fiercely competitive, that there's a strong
right,
correlation there. Would you agree with that?
I would. And I would also say his sense of urgency is what drove all of us. And it was brilliant. And it was just his personality. Nobody taught him that. It was just, he just demanded to know more and more and more. And it was interesting because my agency ended up going to work for the Miller Brewing Company, which was a publicly owned company, perfectly lovely, nice corporate people. And, they always wanted to pick my brain because I came from the dark side. And I said, look, this guy's like working for the union boss.
Yep.
If he says he's going to break your legs, he'll break your legs.
Yep.
But, he will make decisions quickly. He's got ideas all night in the middle of the night, and you hear about him. And I thought that was fun and refreshing and what marketing was about. So to me, it was the best, school of learning marketing that you could ever be in.
Yep. And obviously very successful given all the ROI that you saw following those campaigns. I have a quick story about, I was experienced some of that myself. I worked for one of the distributors when I was in college.
Oh.
And we were delivering to this little known bar right on the river that really no one goes to except the third and the fourth.
I know where it is.
And Brother Steven.
I know where it is.
And I'm there one day delivering beer, and it was the week that Anheuser-Busch came out with the aluminum bottles. And they were so excited because they had beat Miller to the aluminum bottles. So I'm a college kid home from Mizzou unloading this truck with the driver. I'm not the main guy. Helicopter lands in the parking lot, and they both run over and are so excited to tell us that we beat Miller to these aluminum bottles. How are they doing? What are people asking you about them? Or, how do you feel about it? And it was cool for me because, this was a temporary job, but seeing their passion and, it was inspiring to me as a knucklehead college kid about they cared so much about the detail, how clean the truck was, and how many aluminum bottles have we delivered that day? How many are left? I'm thinking these guys are so in the weeds.
Yes.
And you can see that as a byproduct of the entire organization.
Right.
And it was pretty neat.
I mean, they cared about their draft lines being so clean. I actually got put on a new products. August asked me to head up their new product beverage division. And we bought a bottled water company in Saratoga Springs, which was this lovely little old production facility. And naturally carbonated spring water, beautiful packaging. So we buy the company, and August is going to come visit. So I come before him, and I'm explaining to the people running the plant, I'm like, you don't understand. He's going to pick up the drain and look at the bottom of the drain. Like, that's how detailed this is going to be. So we marched through that place, like cleaning and scrubbing and...
They probably love that heads up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and, when our agency was in Chicago, they drank all kinds of different beer up there. And I said, look, if he's coming, you get all that junk out of your refrigerator. You only have Anheuser-Busch products in there.
Yep.
That's awesome. And that's how we operated. My husband was so confused, like what he could and couldn't drink all the time.
Labels out.
Yeah,
Labels
that's
out.
right.
That was
like,
another one.
make that label.
That was a big one. Labels out.
Yeah,
And
they would face the packaging in the coolers. They'd want to, go through the C-stores.
Yep. I feel like we could sit here and tell awesome Anheuser-Busch stories all day. It's awesome. I love it. I guess if you're watching this right now, and again, you're entering marketing, you're trying to figure out marketing, you're starting a company, maybe you work for a marketing firm and you've got an expert here. What advice would you give to somebody? I guess what trends are evergreen that you did back then that were so successful that you think are still, obviously it's evolved. We've got social media now, which you mentioned, obviously that wasn't around. I feel like, and maybe there's some new ones you can touch on. Like, to me, it seems the engagement is different now, But is there any themes that hold true in marketing that, again, somebody watching this might have not thought of yet, that you felt back then was successful and still could be today?
So the thing that always needs to ground you is your consumer. Like understanding your consumers' wants and needs, understanding the competitive environment. So how many products are in this category? How are they priced? How are they positioned? So you always have to be mindful of that. And back in the day for Bud Light, we only had a few tools. We had television, radio, print, outdoor, sports and events. And we could push a lot on consumers. And the only way you really did know how it was impacting is if you went out in the market and you talked to them and you shook their hand and you bought them a beer. Today, it's so different with social media. I mean, immediately if something happens.
Sure.
Like I've been watching this Taylor Swift announcement of her 12th album and how everybody's jumping on that. Panera immediately, like their agencies are all waiting. They jump on, she's in her sourdough making day, right? So how quickly you have to move today is very different, than my day. And you need to study all those ways to do it. You need to make sure that if something gets out and it's not positive and you start getting really negative reaction to that, what's the response to that? Yeah. Where's the firefighters?
Bud Light last year, great example.
Right. Where's the firefighters, man?
Yeah, that's good. Let's fast forward to, the successful transition out of Anheuser-Busch, then comes your own marketing firm. I think this is a great topic because this involves so much more. Obviously, marketing, I'm sure, was at the helm of it being a marketing firm, but also just, having what it takes to start your own business and growing it as dramatically as you did, having over 300 employees. I guess my first question is, at what point did you know or feel like it was time and I had what it takes to go do my own thing? Or maybe you didn't because you were still young and just took the chance.
I was young, and that's part of why I did it. It sounded fun. But more importantly, when I was still at AB, I was working on this one dry beer product. And by that time, I had really gotten a taste for this fast-paced new product introduction. And I realized that how important good ideas were to that. So this guy that I went into business with, Jack Thorwing, was creative director. And I had noticed there would be times where my big agency couldn't get me an idea that I thought was compelling. They were kind of like big and slow and lots of people and everybody had to go up the food chain. Whereas I could call Jack and say, meet me at Balaban's and let's have a drink. And I could get 10 good ideas, fresh ideas out of him that were cheap and fast.
Yeah.
And so he said to me at one point, he said, hey, they don't appreciate what you do. He said, why don't we go into business together and, we can do this for a lot of clients, which sounded exciting to me, more brands, more fun. Yep. And so I kind of just left. And I think they were shocked. I mean, I know there were a lot of women there that were shocked that reached out to me afterwards and said, well, where are you going? Don't you know you're blazing a trail for us? And I'm like, no, that's not what I'm doing. But, looking back now, I realize, oh, yeah, I was one of the first women in marketing. And so anyway, I left. We started Zipatoni. It was not for the faint of heart in the beginning. When you're small and you don't have resources, we didn't have a big capital trough to feed off of. So it's pretty much, what good ideas do you have to sell? Whose door can you get in?
Yep.
And, fortunately, having the AB pedigree, it did open doors.
Sure.
And what was great about that was I had sat in the same seat that the people I'm calling on, I had sat in their seat as a brand manager or brand director. So what I said, I think, had more gravity with them than if I had just been in the agency life, my whole career. So I was able to get the people to sit down and listen. And my whole thing was asking them more questions than telling them what I knew. In the very beginning, if you can open that door by saying what keeps you up at night, what are you seeing about this competitor? once you get them engaged in that conversation, then they're like, you're smart, you can help me.
Yeah.
And then the bright, shiny objects come later.
After. That's really interesting because that's big in our business too. We call it, the fact-finding process where we can't implement anything, product, investment, strategy, until we really get to know what your goals and aspirations are, which are totally different than the next client. And maybe sometimes in marketing, they're pitching or bringing what they think are the best, latest, best, and greatest, but maybe that's not the vision of the business owner or the market.
Right.
So I like that a lot of, we call it get to know your client. It's actually a huge thing in our industry from a compliance perspective, that you really have to understand what they're trying to achieve before you can give them any advice.
Well, and there's a lot of segmentation that goes on in marketing a packaged goods product or what you're doing, in that your clients are not all the same. You may have a young business owner that has very different wants and needs than an older person that's retired, sold their company, and is now, giving money to family members. So understanding that segmentation and what people are looking for is always important with any product category.
Yep. So let's fast forward to today. Another business.
I didn't get any more fun than this.
So now you're running I put down highly regulated, fast paced, maybe challenging, saturated ? How does marketing play a role in what you're doing today?
So again, the consumer is the linchpin, right? Understanding your consumer, and then looking at the segmentation of the consumer base. We have young people today that if they're 21 years old, they can choose a cannabis product, a cannabis beverage, instead of a alcohol beverage. You have, let's say you have middle-aged people that have serious medical issues. We have products that are formulated for various medical conditions. They're very prescriptive. And then you have an older customer base. I just did a podcast this morning about that. These people remember cannabis in the 60s and 70s. They had a good time with it, but it was a very different product then. It was it was difficult to get. It was illegal. They remember it as just fun times. And then they got married, had kids, got jobs, weren't doing cannabis because it's still illegal. Yep. But now it's available to them. And these people, friends of mine, have sleep issues and have chronic pain issues and anxiety. And they also have they're a little suspect of some of the pharmas that they're taking because of side effects and things like that. So they're very open-minded to cannabis, but we haven't filled that information gap. We haven't said to them, oh, here's what you had back in the 70s. Here's what you have today. Yeah. Completely tested. Completely repeatable, and the testing sticker will tell you exactly the cannabinoids that are in there, and the effects are going to be consistent. So it's a different product, and now I have to reach that segment in a different way.
Sure.
Because they're not just wandering into my dispensaries.
Right.
Their friends might be talking about it at the golf course, eating a gummy or whatever, but they don't really know how we can help them on their wellness journey. So we just hired a woman who has a gerontology degree, which is amazing. Yeah. And she's young, and she really believes in this product for wellness purposes. We meet these people where they are. We go out to these facilities. We just went to one in St. Peter's, just 55 plus living, and it's people that have downsized, their kids are out of the house. Yep. And we do a lunch and learn there. And you just can't believe how interested people are when you can go to them, explain it, show them how it works, how easy it is, and then, oh, by the way, deliver it to them. We have to now create customers by segmenting, those people, and it'll build our business that way.
And I imagine some of that is, to your point of they don't know what they don't know. Right. So you're trying to get them to now they know what they know by educating them, which I love the aspect of educating them. Right. There's also probably that stigma that they have to get over a little bit, that because it was illegal 90% of their life, and now it's legal in the state. Right. But I think educating them on it's legal, here's what the benefits are, here's how you get it, maybe they start to get over that stigma of, I remember it back in the day when it was not regulated. You didn't know what you were getting. And
you got it from the guy in the park with the baggie,
right.
I think the biggest marketing success story for cannabis was Sanjay Gupta did a 1-hour special on CNN. He followed a young girl, Charlotte Figge in Colorado, who was epileptic. And this child he was having 50, 75, 100 seizures a day. And it's just so devastating what it does to these kids. And he's a neurologist and never believed in medical cannabis. But he followed this family and was just blown away by, it basically stopped her seizures when she had been on 6 different prescription drugs, which are so difficult. Many times these kids become nonverbal. They don't eat by mouth. And the medication is worse than the actual epilepsy. So people were struggling to find something more natural. This mom finds it. He starts following them, and he basically came out and said, I am wrong. I said that cannabis wasn't medicine. It is. And we have systematically been lied to by the government for 85 years, which we were. And it was made illegal for political and monetary reasons. The hemp industry was starting to take over where DuPont was using chemicals to make things. And, we think maybe the hemp industry was the impetus for the whole thing to get thrown under the bus, which now that's legal as of 2018. And it's wonderful. There's so many things that can be made from hemp. So anyway, it's, it's a fascinating story. It's a fascinating product. It's still a consumer packaged good. At the end of the day, brands will come out and they will, win the day. And that's where the value will be, because I think that we will ultimately, we're going to deschedule this product to maybe 1 to 3 this year, which just helps with pulling back 280E tax restrictions. It should help with banking. But I think once the government just says, we are no longer regulating cannabis, then you're going to have the pharmaceutical guys in for one section of it. You'll have the alcohol, tobacco guys in for the recreational side of it. So, that's what we're doing now, is just trying to build brands that have a great quality reputation, that travel across state lines. And it's going to be the same as my Bud Light.
So you think from a federal perspective, we're not far away?
I think from a federal perspective, they're looking at rescheduling cannabis from Schedule 1, which is the most, it basically says it's addictive, it has no medical benefits, which they know is not true, to Schedule 3, which is like Tylenol.
Yeah.
But that's still, it doesn't say it's federally legal. What that will do is restrict, shipping across state lines. And it will also keep out the bigger public companies. And, while we complain about this being federally illegal, it's what has allowed all these little independent businesses. Like the state of Missouri originally had 500 licenses.
Yeah.
There's some acquisition and roll-up going on now. But it was really wonderful. I saw a couple that owned an independent pharmacy that got out of it and got into owning a cannabis dispensary, which is wonderful. That's what the program was designed to do.
Sure. Yeah. And you're running this business, so you still have a lot of responsibilities, including marketing, right? You're very active with boards, bringing new products. You mentioned new product to me the other day, bringing that to market. So it seems like there's a lot of parallels with what you did in your marketing career that are maybe still driving you, having, and obviously the passion is coming out, which is awesome. It seems like there's a ton of opportunity here for you in this marketplace.
Well, and that's how I got involved in cannabis. I wasn't a cannabis user as a young person, and my son was going to college in Boulder, Colorado. And so that was the year that medical was introduced. And I was just fascinated that there was a brand new industry springing up in front of your face, right? Like, when does that ever happen?
Sure,
the beginning of the internet.
Right.
And so I literally just would go into these places in Denver, introduce myself, Midwest housewife. And these people were amazing. I mean, I found such a community, and all the people who were actually competing against one another, they just wanted you to know what this plant was capable of and how they were growing or how they were manufacturing. And then they would introduce me to their patients coming in the store. And so I was fascinated by that whole thing, because coming from corporate America, big companies who don't share anything, this to me was like, this feels really good, you know? And so when Illinois was passing this law for medical, it's like, I'm gonna try that.
Yeah, that's interesting, because it's almost, I don't know if you've thought about this, you probably have, but it's back to your first story of Bud Light, where you were boots on the ground, getting the marketplace for yourself, and here you are doing it again in a whole new sector.
Right.
So hopefully the ROI for you leads to a similar outcome that Bud Light did.
Yeah, we hope so. I mean, it's not an easy industry. You know, everybody, I think years ago thought, oh man, you get a license, you're going to be a billionaire. And it's probably one of the most difficult spaces to operate in, because it's so regulated. The rules and regs coming from the Department of Health are a lot. You know, I don't know how many security cameras we have across our 18 operations. It's thousands. You know, every plant that we grow has its own unique identifying number. So I can tell you where that individual plant ends up.
Wow.
And that's because of the tracking system that we have, that the Department of Health, their concern is diversion. You know, if I say I've got 10,000 plants in a facility and they come in to do an inspection and I've only got 8, you know, they're like, okay, where'd those 2,000 go? We're diverting them, right? So there's very tight controls, which is good. There's lots of can't use pesticides. You know, everything's got to be expunged from the product. Everything has to be tested with a sticker on it. So that's sort of, you know, that's the reassurance you can give people when they're taking. There's a lot of science. Yeah. And so when you have cultivation, that's agriculture. I need farm boys in there schlepping big plants and knowing how to work hard. Mm-hmm. And then manufacturing is science, and we need chemists and packaging people. And then retail is retail. So when you run an operation the size of ours, you've got to have a lot of different people and a lot of different hats.
Yeah. Very interesting. It seems like just a massive upside there, getting past some of the regulation. I don't know if it seems like it was oversaturated in the beginning. Maybe that's flushing out with the ones that are doing it professionally and making a profit, right? But, you know, we wish you the best. I guess following your story from boots on the ground, coming up the concept, maybe there's a mascot, Buds McKenzie, you know, I don't know.
That's what everybody asks me.
That could be the next iteration for round 2 of success.
Buds to Buds.
Buds to Buds. Well, this has been awesome. Really appreciate you sharing a lot of the great stories. Hopefully, again, if you were watching this episode, you know, came across something that's helpful for you in a marketing role or wanting to market yourself or your company, I'll be sure to put Mitch's company information on there. And, you know, do yourself a favor and look up her career, and maybe you can learn something about marketing from her. So it's been really nice having you on. Appreciate your time, and thank you all for visiting with us, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.